recording. All right. So it looks like there has been an update from the steering committee with regards to creating new repos for SIGs. Tim, why don't you give us an update on that?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So there's a temporary landing location now. It's called Kubernetes SIGs. It's not per org or there's not a SIG per org or org per SIG. So it's going to be a flat space. There's some minor constraints around having a well-defined owners file. That owners file points back to the SIG. That's the only really constraint there. You can preface, you don't need to, but you can preface the name of the SIG if you wanted to into the name. I think that would probably help for discoverability, right? Because I do think like, otherwise, if you just have a flat namespace, you're going to run into the same problem that Incubator has. And then it's just dozens of repos that's very difficult to make sense out of, right? But if you did something like if we could define our own policy of how we name repositories, right? So if we wanted to say like scheduling dash something, right? We could apply that to any subcomponent in a separate repo. So if we did scheduler dash framework, that makes perfect sense, right?
Right.
Or if we did scheduler dash descheduler, that's kind of weird, right?
Yeah. Or you can maybe prefix everything with the SIG's name, which is scheduling, and then make it like scheduling, scheduler framework, scheduling, descheduler, or what.
But all of the other side projects that are currently in Incubator, they're going to need to find a new home eventually. Doesn't need to happen now, right? Or even like 6 months from now. But in a year's time frame, the plan is that everything in Incubator should be moved out probably by that time. And this is the temporary landing home. We haven't really determined whether or not it'll be the final landing home, right? This is kind of like, we need a place for people that are coming in, like the folks from Huawei want to land the firmament scheduler that they have. And this would be a place for them to land it. And this would also be a place for us to land the scheduler framework stuff if we wanted to.
Right. Okay. Sounds good. So do you think that other incubators will eventually, I mean, you already said it, I guess that other incubator projects, two in particular come to my mind. One is Kube Arbitrator and the other one is Descheduler.
And there is another one, cluster capacity also.
Right, cluster capacity as well, right? So we should probably see them eventually move to this particular repo, right?
Yeah.
To this org. They could be separate. You can shift repos from one org to the other. And so it'll have to be shifted into that org, which is Kubernetes SIGs, right? So, and if we wanted to, we could consolidate into repos, or we could split apart. We could do whatever we wanted to do, right? Okay. We as a SIG have autonomy to decide what is the granularity and what repositories we will sponsor underneath there. And that's totally up to us, which is nice, right? So we have a little bit of freedom there to say, like, we're going to create a scheduler framework isolated repository. And that the only thing that lives in there are all the details for the scheduler framework.
Okay, okay, that's nice, right? All right. Actually, speaking of the scheduler and cluster capacity tool, Avish, do you have any updates on those, or the status of those two projects?
I mean, recently we haven't added new features. Basically, like what features we have already had. Definitely, we have been fixing some bugs. And we have rebased to 1.9. And I also made releases based on 1.9. So I think that's the current latest update I have right now.
So for both of the tools, like both the scheduler and also cluster capacity?
Yeah, both have been rebased to 1.9.
Okay. And I haven't really had the chance to try the scheduler. What is your general feeling about the tool? Is it kind of like ready for production, or you still think that it has some?
Actually, I would not say that it's ready for production, because definitely we haven't tested at very large scale. But one thing we have done, like you might be knowing, we have like OpenShift Online, and they are like we have run that in dry run mode. In dry run mode, what it does, it does not evict any pods. It just lists like what pods would be evicted if we ran the scheduler.
Right.
So that's what we have done. We have done some testing on small clusters, like few nodes cluster. Definitely, we haven't done on large clusters. So still, I mean, definitely, like we don't have that much confident, or at least I cannot say very confidently that we can still run that in large cluster. But definitely, we need more experience with that. But I mean, so we need more feedback for sure.
That makes sense.
So one of the things I was thinking about, like we had it as its separate component for forever, right? But it really, I've always personally thought that it could be a separate Go routine in the scheduler itself, but a feature gated, totally isolated, you have to buy into it type of thing, because you're populating the same caches, right? You're doing a lot of the same algorithmic stuff. You have the same data. So it makes a ton of sense to eventually, not now, have the idea of potentially merging this as a Go routine, similar to the way the controller manager works, where it starts many different controllers, right?
Yeah.
This could just be a separate routine that gets spawned as a feature gated, totally sandboxed. It has to be enabled for an opt-in type of thing.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, I definitely agree. I mean, I would say I don't disagree with that. But I think one biggest advantage I see that because it's outside. First of all, like we can manage it. It can have its own life cycle. Like we can make changes in the code as much as we want. Like we have done so many releases. Once it's inside the scheduler, maybe we won't be able to do that much freely. And because
I'm thinking like down the road, right? Like way down the road when you're not
yeah,
making
yeah, maybe
anymore.
not.
It's
But
like solid, and then
and another
all
thing,
you're doing is rebasing, right?
yeah, and another thing because it can be run as a pod, so I think it also makes it like very nice utility that you can run outside. And I think the way like you were talking about caches, I think cluster capacity has more caching as scheduler has, but this scheduler really don't have that much. This scheduler does not have any caches. It just like it gets information about nodes and pods in the beginning, and then it runs its policies and strategies on them, and it evicts pod. So in that regard, I would say cluster capacity is more closer to scheduler code base than this scheduler.
Yeah, but I agree with him in one regard. So, I mean, at some point when our scheduling framework is in
Yeah,
place, this can be like a good plugin for that, so that it, for example, runs alongside the main path of the scheduling, which is
yeah,
basically schedules all pods. So it will be great if some customers want to enable this particular plugin for their clusters or
yeah,
not.
exactly. Yeah,
So
basically it's a controller. Yeah, so like it can be part of the main or it can be outside. Yeah.
yeah, that would be a great example for like a plugin that is not necessarily invoked at a particular phase of the scheduling of a pod, but
Yeah,
instead it just runs sort of like alongside in parallel
yeah,
or
exactly. Yeah,
scheduling path. And another benefit is that, so both for this and maybe for cluster capacity at some point, especially for the scheduler, if people want to run both the scheduler um, and the main scheduler on their master node, probably they need more memory if they want to basically keep two of these processes, because probably they use the same information, like something similar to scheduler cache, some information about nodes, some information about pods on those nodes, and
yeah,
all that the scheduler caches. By combining the two into one process, we can save on memory on master node.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, you are right. Also, like scheduler keeps updating. I mean, yeah, I agree. I mean, that's possible, definitely. Yeah,
There's also like, if you look at like other algorithm models like the Firmament model, which is based on the Quincy model,
yeah,
they continually do rescheduling as part of the process,
right,
right?
right.
So the original algorithm was at least written that way, right? So it's a data flow algorithm, which is much faster than what we do, right?
Right, right.
And it has that built into the actual scheduling process. So it will redo and reschedule continually. right? So that long-term goal, I think, is a worthwhile
Yeah, right.
type of thing. And again, this is like way down the road. This is not like now, because I realize there's plenty of other things in logistics we have to deal with now.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that.
All right. So I guess there is one more update on from my side on priority and preemption. One of the challenges we are facing today is that we haven't been able to find the real customers. By real customers, I mean people that we know are running sizable clusters to test priority and preemption. If you guys know anybody who wants to try the feature, that would be great, because we really wanted to get some mileage before we move it to beta. There are unknown problems. Actually, we've already received a couple of comments and feedback from some of the users in the community who have tried it, and we have identified one issue. It was not an issue in preemption per se, but it was the fact that some of our critical add-ons didn't have priority. And when priority was enabled in a cluster, some of those critical add-ons were evicted by or preempted by the scheduler. So we are working on adding those priorities to critical add-ons and all, but would like to get more feedback from like bigger customers who may want to try this feature before we really move it to beta.
Yeah,
Actually,
like,
beta blocker if we cannot find anyone.
yeah, but I think in in 1.10, once 1.10 is released, I think we would be able to use those features because, as you said, there are two things like we are looking for. First of all, like for our infra components, so that like if they have higher priority, they can be scheduled before other pods. And second thing, like we are looking for because in Kubernetes we have eviction manager. And eviction manager currently uses critical pod annotations. So it is possible if we don't have, if we don't use critical pod annotation anyway, we are not going to use them. If we use priority, so they won't be evicted, because otherwise, if we don't have those priority on critical pods, sometimes Kubernetes might evict those pods.
Right.
So in these two scenarios, definitely we are going to try in one dot or maybe in that time frame.
Yeah, Kubelet is already actually. I think Ravi is already added.
Ravi's PR is making that change, right?
Yes, so he has made some changes to the kubelet logic as well.
So in these two scenarios, like we are going to test the priority and preemption.
Okay, sounds good. So yeah, we would also like to see more usage by our customers. We will also try to find GKE customers to see if they are willing to try it or let us enable priority and preemption in their clusters to get some feedback.
Yeah, basically, first for infra and system components, then for user pods.
Yeah. So that's actually all the items that I wanted to talk about. I don't have a whole lot of other updates.
One thing I wanted to know, like I know like Ravi has been helping in some of the issues and features. Are you still looking for some more help? If you I'm sorry, like I'm definitely can help in other items if you're looking for help.
Well, one area that we still need more help is actually code reviews. So I constantly get a lot of code review requests in the scheduling.
Is it possible?
Yeah.
Is it possible like sometimes you can directly assign to me? So in whatever the reviews, if you need help, if you can assign to me, that might be easier to me, like to what to PRs I have to give more attention. Otherwise, sometimes I can miss.
Yeah. So I can certainly do that. At the same time, it will be great if you also show up more basically in some of these PRs and say, because today a lot of people just assume that I am the only reviewer or I am the only person who has the approval power. Actually, Harry is helping us a lot in terms of reviewing PRs, so I have to give credit to him. And also sometimes Klaus helps as well.
Also, like Yeah, I don't have approval power, but I mean definitely can help with review. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so a lot of these issues come to us for reviews, but yeah,
So,
it'll be great to get more help from other people as
Yeah.
so my
This is
bandwidth
okay.
this
Go ahead.
cycle has been limited
well.
because Lucas has stepped out for military service on SIG cluster lifecycle, and he did a lot. And my time has been inundated with SIG cluster lifecycle PR reviews. So my bandwidth to review SIG scheduling PRs has been greatly diminished over the last year or so. So I would like to, but I think this cycle I will have limited capacity to do so.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I understand your situation. Go ahead, Mayor.
Yeah, so I'm interested in the scheduling work, and I think I was just talking to you on Slack. I'm a developer in Salesforce, and I've made a few contributions. Are there any ways you guys are thinking of bringing up more, like onboarding more reviewers in the scheduling area? Like, do you guys have recommendations?
The typical way that works the best is once you are a maintainer and you are part of the org, there are separate teams that you can notify. One of those teams is PR reviews. And if you're on the team, every time they the PR review, all the reviewers will get a notification. That way you should see. Another second way, if you want to build up, you're not part of the main org, but you want to become a member, is to do a query on the pull requests and see if the scheduling label is applied to it. If that scheduling label is applied to it, feel free to comment. You don't need to necessarily be an expert in the space to review someone else's code. Right. So long as you are, you can review their logic and start plunking down and executing in that way. So those are the two best ways. And we helped guide Klaus through this, and Klaus went from like 0 to 60 because he's already been in the scheduling space for some time. So it was nice, right? So he knew, he's worked on other open source projects before. And that's the easiest way to get notifications and to get up to speed if you want to become a maintainer or a reviewer.
Sounds good. I'm already a member of the org because I think I made some contributions. What's the process of getting onto the reviewers list? Is that
you have to? So you're a member of the main org. If all you have to do is request to join. So there are separate teams on the Kubernetes.
And
if you go to the main Kubernetes.
Yeah, and then there are some guidelines, I believe, and of some requirements, I think, for becoming a reviewer.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. Let me find that link. What is it called? Governance, I think.
There's a large number of people on our list. So here is the, I'll paste in the chat window. We got like 26 people, 27 people on most of our.
Bobby, I'm sorry. I mean, if you see the Slack channel, there is one guy who is looking to join, but I think he has the old link to this. So I don't know whether if you can post this link to the SIG Slack channel. Slack channel. Some more people might join, I think.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I just sent the link to basically the different level of membership to our meeting, and then I can also send it there.
Thanks.
Yeah, sure. So there are some requirements, but basically the idea is that you start contributing by reviewing code, by submitting PR, and as you basically build up this experience and review more code and merge more PRs and add new PRs, you gradually go up in the ladder. That's the basic idea. So if you start contributing more, it's pretty natural to see yourself going up the ladder and becoming reviewer and approver and so on in the near future.
Sounds good.
I think actually the bar is not very high, to be honest. I think the number of PRs or the number of contributions required is not that high.
Right. Yeah, I think I'm already reviewing SIG apps once a lot, but this one I want to start. The second question, I think you probably already answered. So you're saying the assume pod is being actively worked on, but there is no current fix as of now. So do you know what the issue is? Like, I mean, I know the scheduler, basically, like we are betting big on the stateful sets, and we are seeing that very often the assume pod failures are seen. And we have to literally go and like, because our API servers are, or the schedulers are in HA configuration, we have to literally log into all our hosts, 3 hosts, and basically restart the schedulers. So what's the issue? I'm thinking of like basically writing something that will detect the event and basically do a literally restart of the scheduler. But when do you think is this going to be solved? And are there other workarounds, easier workarounds?
I can give a little bit background and a quick update on this issue. So for others, if they don't know what we're talking about, actually we've seen that the scheduler cache sometimes gets stale. So it happens in various scenarios. We have seen that the scheduler, for example, tries to schedule a pod that doesn't exist in the cache. We have seen the scheduler tries to schedule pods on a node that is in the cache, but the node is actually deleted from the cluster. So basically, scheduler somehow didn't receive. It looks like the scheduler didn't receive the delete event for that node. So scheduler keeps the node in the cache, in its cache, and keeps trying to schedule on that node. You've seen scenarios where a scheduler thinks that a node is full because some pods are in the scheduler cache, and they, from a scheduler's point of view, they are on that node, but those pods are actually deleted and don't exist on the node. So the node resources become underutilized because the scheduler doesn't put anything there. So these are some of the scenarios that we've seen. All of them indicate that scheduler somehow misses some events from the API server. So there are, unfortunately, multiple moving pieces in this path. One is that maybe etcd didn't send these events out. Maybe API server didn't send those out. Maybe the scheduler received those and dropped them on the floor. So there are a bunch of these moving pieces. There are actually the API or the API server team, or the CSI as they call it here, are looking at some of these issues. They're trying to debug this problem. So far, we are not so confident about what is the actual problem here, whether it's the etcd or it's the API server that is not sending the events, or is it scheduler that is not really processing those events properly. We don't know yet. We have had some workaround in the scheduler recently. One was something that I added to make processing some of these delete events for pods a little more robustly by looking at the status of these objects which are deleted. Before, we were always assuming that these object types, basically when we receive the event, there is an object that we receive with the event. We were assuming that the object should always be of type pod, but sometimes the object type is unknown, and we have to look inside those unknown object types to find the actual object which got deleted, and then convert that to pod. That logic didn't exist. I've added that recently. We've added another sort of like workaround to the scheduler to take care of the deleted pod events. So if we miss those, deleted node events, if we miss those deleted node events in the scheduler, we now have a logic in like the binding phase of the scheduling. When a scheduler tries to bind a pod to a node and the node does not exist, the scheduler tries to get that node from the API server. If the API server still says that node does not exist, then a scheduler drops the node from its cache. So these are a couple of improvements we've done to the scheduler to solve some of the issues, but the real problem and the root cause of the problem is not known yet.
Okay. So is there a one issue where we are like, I think you basically outlined a bunch of things, and is there one issue that's basically tracking all this, and then I can follow that, and then my next question is the improvement that you just suggested, are they in 1.10 or are they in 1.9?
One of them for taking care of deletion of nodes, I believe in 1.9.
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure because sometimes I forget about the exact timelines where the code freeze happened and all. but I believe that one is 1.9. The latter one, improving the deletion of pods, which I added, that one is going to be in 1.10.
Got it. Okay. So is there a tracking issue now that or should I create one where?
You can create a tracking issue for this general problem of scheduler cache.
There's a problem though, is we have like over 270, or last time I checked, we had like 270 issues that were open, right? And my guess is that that's probably already been recorded somewhere in that issue set, right? Either they already have the label applied or you do a keyword search. So you'd have to suss through that sample space, because right now there's 27,000 issues in Kubernetes, and 4,000 open ones, 250 or 200 something are related to the scheduler, and some of those are old and require cleaning. But I'm guessing because some of these issues, namely like the cache stuff, have been replicated in a number of places, and some of them have even been fixed. I know Jordan found and fixed one of the thorny cache issues that have existed for a long time. And I do know that with some of the other changes that we're making with regards to the equivalence caching stuff, we might reintroduce some other things. But
right, I think I understand your concern. It sounds so. I think people are reporting a lot of these with assume pod issues, but it sounds like Bobby has a lot of those thoughts that he just outlined, right? It sounds like it might be beneficial that Bobby or you, or I mean, maybe he creates this issue with all these findings, and then we close all the other ones, saying those are just versions of this. Like, I mean, basically, I want a place where I can track this. I mean, if there is a better suggestion for tracking this, I'm open to it. I just want to make sure that I have we are upgrading our production DC's Kubernetes, but there is like, how do I get notified if this gets fixed, and those kind of things is what my concern is.
Sure, I can create an issue covering some of these. So as Tim said, there are already a couple of issues. Some of them are actually already closed because we found sort of like a workaround for them. But there are a bunch of issues which are targeting particular problems. They are not really covering the whole issue that exists, which is basically missing of events in the scheduler cache. I'm going to create one issue that covers all of these scenarios, and then we can reference other issues in that one.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Umbrella. Sure. So is there any question, comment?
Yes, actually I had something. So let me start with introducing myself. I'm a maintainer of Cluster Autoscaler, and basically we figured out that we depend pretty heavily on scheduler. I don't know how much you know about Cluster Autoscaler, but it actually works by literally importing scheduler code and simulating how scheduler would behave in different scenarios. So first of all, sort of in SIG Autoscaling, we figured out we want to have someone attending your meetings just in case there is some change that can affect us, so we're not blindsided by it. I'm not sure yet if it's going to be me permanently or is it going to be someone else. But so that's sort of a general thing we figured out might make sense. So we sort of can prepare for any changes in advance. And specifically for this meeting, it seems from this meeting today, it seems actually the scheduler is something that is, let's say, it can have an interaction with Cluster Autoscaler, and actually it would probably be good to make sure those two things work together because they are a natural fit. Both, I assume, are aimed at improving cluster utilization and just making sure that stuff, I mean, basically the cluster as a whole makes sense. So is there somewhere like a design or just repo, some good starting points so we can look at it and maybe we can have, I don't know, a meeting or maybe talk during next SIG, just basically how those two things relate to each other and how we can make them actually work together. Is that something that makes sense to you?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I know that cluster autoscaler heavily depends on the scheduler and the scheduler predicates in particular to basically try or simulate the state of a cluster and figure out whether a pod could possibly fit on another node and stuff like that. So we are very well aware of that. And actually, it makes a lot of sense for autoscaler and scheduler to work closely together. As far as docs and all is concerned, we have a repository in community repo for like SIG scheduling design docs. You may already be aware of that, but I'm not so sure if you're looking for something else or that is enough. What's your take, Maciek?
I mean, to be honest, I haven't looked around there to see what's there. I mean, I have a pretty good knowledge of how most of scheduling work. I spent quite a lot of time reading predicate code. So it's just during this meeting in particular, you were talking about, yes, the desk scheduler.
Scheduler is not a part of a scheduler today.
Yes, I am aware of it. It's a separate. I understood it's a separate sort of project and a separate pod or however it's done in the cluster. It's just I'm trying to figure out if it's interesting from the point of view of its maintainers to sort of get in touch with us and make sure those two things work well together.
Yeah.
Avesh is the right person. Avesh, go ahead.
Yeah, actually, that's what I mentioned on Slack channel. That definitely it would be good to integrate those two, and this scheduler might get benefit if somehow it got some signal from cluster autoscaler whenever new node is added, so that it knows when to get activated in that regard.
Okay. Do you think? I mean, I would love to get into some more detailed discussion, but I don't know anything about the scheduler other than what it's probably. I mean, all I know is based on the name, really. So, do you have some good starting point for me to learn about it, and then maybe we can just have a meeting and discuss it? I don't know, in a week or two.
Yeah, I mean, there are two documents. Like we have a README on the scheduler repo in GitHub, and there is design document also. If you want, I can share that. I think it's if you are part of the SIG scheduling, I think there might be link already. If you want, I can forward you again. So those are the two things like you can start with. In fact, I would say like first you start with README on GitHub on the scheduler repo. And after that, if you want to have a meeting, I mean, I would be happy to have a meeting for that.
Okay, I mean, if that's something that's interesting to you, and just so we can coordinate a bit and just have talk maybe for an hour, and then hopefully make sure we're going in the same direction.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, like definitely, from the beginning, there like we have some long-term plan to have it integrated with key cluster autoscaler. And as I said, like the first use case, I think that we wanted to address the same thing, like whenever the new node is added, and that time it knows that this scheduler can get activated because now new node is empty, so that it can evict some pods from the other nodes, so those can be scheduled on this new node, and we can have sort of better balanced cluster. So that's the I think first use case like we wanted to target when we integrated with cluster autoscaler. Like maybe in the future we might have more, but that might be a starting point.
Okay, I'll go to the README on your repo then, and then maybe I'll just write something on the SIG scheduling channel once I get through it, and then we can.
Yeah, or you can whatever way, like there are so many ways to interact.
So I generally see kind of like an overlap between certain things in scheduler and descheduler and autoscaler. Particularly preemption in the scheduler and also some of the work in autoscaler and descheduler are kind of like overlapping with one another. Descheduler and autoscaler also has a component that are kind of like doing the exact same thing. Basically, autoscaler can put more pods on, or pack basically nodes with more pods and remove some of the nodes from the cluster. That's the path for like shrinking the cluster. And and these schedulers seem to be doing somewhat of a similar work. So it would be great for all of us to think about the future of all of these three components and maybe how we can convert some of those into fewer components if possible.
Yeah, right. I mean, it would be good to eliminate overlap, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Is there any question, comment?
So there is one more thing. I don't know if this is already fixed. We keep seeing this match node selector issue where I don't know if this belongs to the scheduling group or not, where there are a large number of pods that show up as match node selector issue. And we upgraded from 1.5 to 1.7. But so I think the node affinity moved from annotations to a field. So I think that was related, but then I think we still keep seeing for newer pods also.
So what is the issue exactly?
So I think I know what he's talking about, because this was a long time ago when we originally everything was an annotation for like affinity and taints tolerations, and then we moved them to a field, and that was like 1.6 time frame.
Yeah.
And that was when we did that, a bunch of things broke. So if you had the legacy, we had this crib in 1.6. The crib allowed for both the annotations and the fields, right? And then when you went to 1.7, we got rid of the annotation support. So if you had the original annotation and you didn't upgrade to a field, then you would have some weird problems, right? But just to be clear here, 1.7 isn't even supported. Like you're out of support lifecycle for Kubernetes. So Kubernetes only supports 3 revisions. So it's 1.9 now, so it's 1.9, 1.8, and 1.7, right? So if you upgraded from previous versions and you skipped a version without upgrading some of the fields for your original submission YAML, you're going to run into whole bucket loads of issues over time because of how APIs got promoted and the shuffling of APIs over time. And like, so every single iteration of the Kubernetes, as you go from A to B, you need to be very careful with how your YAML is specified and to make sure that anything gets promoted from annotations to APIs needs to have that update, especially if you skip a version update. That's
right.
That
But I think we are skipping a minor version, right? This is not a major version. So
there's no difference in Kubernetes. A minor version is nearly a major version. Like in Kubernetes, it supports 1.release across upgrades. If you skip an upgrade and you go to 2, then it is not supported. It is not tested.
You mean like, even with the minor version?
Yes. So if you went from 1.5 to 1.7, that is a not supported, not tested path.
Oh, I see. I thought minor versions were supported. Okay.
My single dot revisions of minor versions are, right?
And
this,
can you give me an example?
Actually,
what do you mean by
so 1.6 to 1.7 is supported, 1.7 to 1.8 is supported. But if you went from 1.5 to 1.7, that is not supported.
I see. Okay, but what I was trying to say is like, I think I'm still seeing that issue even like after the upgrade, right? So now those pods are deleted and and recreated, and we are still come across that issue sometimes. Is that something that belongs to scheduling, and what can I do more to get this debugged? Or
writing up a canonical issue which outlines your problem and the version you have, as well as grabbing the manifest for your submission.
Right.
So like in order for us to diagnose anything, like we need the submission, the log for the scheduler, and the event, notification that was specified in order to really debug things well, right?
Got it.
And the version information of all of that.
Sounds good. Okay, I'll do that.
Just one thing I would like to point out. I mean, it's a very simple thing. Several, I mean, yeah, whatever like Tim said, definitely but just one thing, like several times in like the clusters like we are running, whenever like we see this match node selector issue, most of the time it's a configuration issue. I mean, most of the time.
What kind of configuration issue? It's like
If the selectors are not set correctly, what like node labels and selectors on pods, and maybe you are having some policies based on like there are some admission plugins, and maybe they are not correctly configured. So several times we have seen those kinds of configuration issues in our clusters. I mean, I just wanted to point out that might not be the case, but just as a like, simple point.
Yeah, I can't tell you the number of times before affinities were fields that I had to debug poor souls because the annotations were not type checked even on admission. That like we had structured JSON in the input of an annotation that wasn't field checked all the way through. So, you know, that legacy was not kosher. At least now it's checked on admission, right? So it's hard type checked. But even then you can come across malformed strings, which is really easy to make a mistake on.
Got it. Okay, sounds good. I'll debug this more and file an issue.
Yeah, for what's worth, I don't think there is any general issue with node selectors.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. Any other question, comments? Okay. All right. So I guess we are gonna get another 14 minutes or so back. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.